This is critical information of military police.
Well, the interesting thing is that, well, we'll see. I'll show you. Military police are privateers. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, I meant a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything, and I'm open to any ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. The people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If people do not know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana-growing, whiskey-drinking, tax-evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the pigs. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for men, people of good conscience, to remain silent. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like a fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes, whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader, and refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. Why do you think they're always saying, we want you to be safe? It's Article 10 of the Libra Code. Military jurisdictions, 2 kinds. First, that which is conferred and defined by statute. Why do you think there's millions of statutes? Second, that which is derived from the common law of war. Military offenses under the statute law must be tried in the manner therein directed, but military offenses which do not come within the statute must be tried and punished under the common law of war. The character of the courts which exercise these jurisdictions depends upon the local laws of each particular country. In the armies of the United States, the first is exercised by court-martial, while cases which do not come within the rules and articles of war or the jurisdiction conferred by statute on court-martial are tried by military commissions. That's why these judges are all wearing military uniforms. They're military commissioners. All statutes are in support of the martial law. All statutes apply to subjects only. There's 2 kinds of court proceedings, court-martial and military commissions. The only Article 3 courts are set up by we the people. That's jural assemblies. And most people are too stupid to figure that kind of stuff out. And that's why there's very few people participating in those. No bar member can hold an Article 3 court because they're all foreign agents of the Roman cult. This is the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. We can join the people and public service to establish key relationships which build critical foundations in restoring America, and that's true. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. On YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you can be notified when there's a new upload. On Steemit, don't forget to vote and make your comments. That's the front page of my channel. Arrow is pointing at the bell. The subscribe button's already clicked. If the bell needs to be clicked because if it was clicked, it would look like it's vibrating. A privateer. A privateer is a vessel owned and operated by private persons, but authorized by a nation on certain conditions to damage the commerce of the enemy by acts of piracy. That's why I say they're pirates. A sailor on such a vessel. A privateer is a sailor on such a vessel. Okay, so they're all privateers. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Privateering, international law, the practice of arming privately owned merchant ships for the purpose of attacking enemy trading ships. Before the practice was outlawed, governments commissioned privateers by issuing letters of marque to their merchant fleets. Privateering was prohibited by the Declaration of Paris concerning naval warfare in 1856, which has been observed by nearly all nations since that time, so they're outlawed. But that's exactly what they are when you understand, because it's all for U.S. citizens. It's all commerce. You see what I'm saying?
Nothing said that it was outlawed on land. Just see.
There you go. International, well,
No,
it was
they-
actually outlawed for international law. Declaration of Paris conceiving naval warfare. Yeah, you're right. But you're, and I do address that.
Okay.
Letters of marque, the law of marque. Remember they talk about letters of marque right here, issuing letters of marque. Actually talks about it in the Constitution too. Law of marque, a rule of reprisal, allowing one who has been wronged but cannot obtain justice to take the goods of the wrongdoer found within the wronged person's precinct in satisfaction of the wrong. So think about it. That's what they're doing is when you've been wronged, and that's what's going to happen. I can just about guarantee you. People are going to start stealing city property and stuff like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Letters of marque. This is Black's Law Dictionary 8th edition. That was 8th edition, 2590. This is 2654. Letters of marque, and that one is law of marque, right? Letters of marque. A license authorizing a private citizen to engage in reprisals against citizens or vessels of another nation. Congress has the exclusive power to grant letters of marque, but has not done so since the 19th century. Also terms letters of marque and reprisal. Formerly, it was not uncommon for a state to issue letters of marque to one of its own subjects who had met with the denial of justice in another state, authorizing him to redress the wrong for himself by forcible actions such as the seizure of the property of subjects of the delinquent state. See? So I'm going to get a letter of marque against Canadians, and I'm going to seize Canadians' vehicles.
From your common law court,
We'll see. I guess we'll
who's
see.
going to issue?
I don't know. I guess we'll see. But that's what I'd like to get. International law rule. And what I'd like to do is get the county sheriff. Get the county sheriff. Look, I got this letter of marque. I want to. There's somebody from Canada over there. Let's go seize his car, and you can get a piece of the action. Because the county sheriff always gets a cut anyways. International law rule. Adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction. Federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only statutory, but the common law of the state. State and federal venue discussed. The civil law is effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction or federal law. So it's international law everywhere. They're assaulting you with international law. This is jurisdiction over federal areas within the states. Report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction of Federal Areas within the States, Part 2, a text of the law of legislative jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President June 1957, page 158 to 165. This is all international law. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in a catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power, that's military dictatorship, folks, nationally covers those citizens, even in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948.
That's the overlay.
That's right. The term special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States, as used in this title, includes the high seas or any other waters within the Admiralty and Maritime Jurisdiction of the United States, and out of the jurisdiction of any particular state, and any vessel belonging in whole or in part to the United States, or any citizen thereof, or to any corporation created by or under the laws of the United States, or of any state, territory, district, or possession thereof, when such vessel is within the Admiralty maritime jurisdiction of the United States and out of the jurisdiction of any particular state. So everybody with state-issued plates is in international law. That's 18 U.S.C. Section 7, Special Maritime and Territorial Jurisdiction of the United States defined.
I have one.
Huh?
What if you're running down the road with plates that belong to a corporation?
Gee, it says, or to any corporation
No.
created by or under the laws of the United States.
What if the man that's in the driver, well, in the seat operating it, is not a U.S. citizen and doesn't have a social, but he has plates that belong to a corporation? How's that work? Well,
It says, or any corporation created by or under the laws of the United States.
Okay, so the property is under their jurisdiction, but the man wouldn't. How would that work, though?
Well, the property is under their jurisdiction. They treat you, they presume, right? It's all presumption, you know?
Right. They can presume that, well, that means that they could still seize the property, but they basically still don't have jurisdiction over the
They
man.
may not have jurisdiction over you, but they'll try and drag you in there. 1851. Propeller Genesee Chief et al. Versus Fitzhugh, U.S. Supreme Court. It may embrace also the vehicles and persons engaged in carrying it on. It would be in the power of Congress to confer admiralty jurisdiction upon its courts over the cars engaged in transporting passengers or merchandise from one state to another, and over the persons engaged in conducting them, and deny to the parties the trial by jury. Judge works for the state, prosecutor works for the state, police or witness works for the state. Vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party, and since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. Oh, look! A kangaroo court! Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966. Public Law 89-719, located at 80 Stat 1130 and 1131. Security interest. The term security interest means any interest in property acquired by contract or for the purpose of securing payment or performance of an obligation or identifying against loss or liability. A security interest exists at any time. A motor vehicle. The term motor vehicle means a self-propelled vehicle which is registered for highway use under the laws of any state or foreign country.
Not registered.
If
not a
it's
motor
registered, huh?
vehicle. Not registered, not a motor vehicle.
There you go.
Can't be one.
That's right. Now under Title 18, it says it has to be registered. They define what carrying passengers or property for hire is.
And if the registration runs out, or you're obligated to renew it if you're not engaged in commercial activity?
No, but I would put on another plate. I wouldn't leave that state plate on there because they're going to,
Assume that it's...
unless you get yourself in a system where they recognize that number and they say, well, we're going to leave this guy alone. I believe there's people like that in Arizona. I've seen people in Arizona with plates that are expired by like decades. See what I'm saying?
How about, or like Carlson, where he paid for the plate?
Well, and
What he does to the, what does he
he's
do?
got stuff on there showing, and the plates from Canada.
Right.
Okay, so that's
It's different.
a little different.
It's almost as good as being from the Republic of Texas,
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
which is why if you have the private plate, now they're out of luck. They
The other
can't
thing
run.
I've done as well is I've removed, well, it's not completely removed, but I've obscured the tag.
Right, the sticker.
Expired tag, which is what would give them any kind of, in their view, probable cause. That's the offence in their view, it's an expired tag.
Right.
It's out of their jurisdiction anyway, because it's not part of the US.
Right.
It's one less thing to remove from their view.
Right.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Security. The term security means any bond, debenture, note, certificate, or other evidence of indebtedness issued by a corporation or a government or political subdivision thereof, with interest coupons or in registered form, share of stock, voting trust certificate, any certificate of interest or participation in certificate of deposit or receipt for, temporary or in term certificate for, or warrant or right to subscribe to or purchase any of the foregoing negotiable instrument or money. So that's all securities. Matter of fact, your certificate of title is a security. I've seen court cases that talk about that. Martial law supersedes and replaces common law. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial, and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter. We saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. Despotism is a military dictatorship. People nowadays don't have a clue. There are no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden. It's evidence of martial law, with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. It's evidence of martial law. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. What that's saying is that Texas is de facto, completely de facto. There's no, the Republic of Texas is de jure. The state of Texas is all de facto. That's exactly what they're saying. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions for its application. They know they're de facto. That's why they're making stuff like that. Arizona, same thing. All common law offenses and affirmative defenses are abolished. No conduct or omission constitutes an offense or an affirmative defense unless it is an offense or an affirmative defense under this title or under another statute or ordinance. NSA takes care of the spying, CIA takes care of the drug trade, FBI takes care of the terror attacks and false flag, Homeland Security takes care of the rest. There's terrorism right there. That's where it's all coming from. The CIA owns every one of any significance in the major media. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. Deception is a state of mind and the mind of the state. Instruction for the government of the armies of the United States in the field, prepared by Francis Lieber, originally issued as General Orders Number 100, Adjutant General's Office, 1863, Washington, 1898, Government Printing Office. That's the Lieber Code. Under Article 1, a place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading army or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants has been issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation or conquest. The presence of a hostile army proclaims its martial law. Article 2. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the Commander-in-Chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war. So there's only two ways that it can end. And in Texas, neither one of those has happened. And I've read a lot of treaties of peace, and I've seen none of them, like the Treaty of Hidalgo, says nothing about ending the martial law. There's no Treaty of Peace in Texas. Martial law, this is Article 3. Martial law in a hostile country consists in suspension by the occupying military authority of the civil and criminal law and the domestic administration of government in the occupied place or territory, and in substitution of military rule and force for the same, as well as in the dictation of general laws, as far as military necessity requires the suspension, substitution, or dictation. The commander of the forces may proclaim that the administration of all civil and penal law shall continue either wholly or in part as in times of peace, unless otherwise ordered by the military authority. So, again, it's a military dictatorship. That's why they're using the word dictation. Note, under the law martial, only the criminal jurisdiction of a military court is the recognized law, but as Article 3 says, the civil courts can continue wholly or in part as long as the civil jurisdiction does not violate the military orders laid down by the Commander-in-Chief or one of his commanders. By this means, a military venue, jurisdiction, and authority are imposed upon the occupied populace under the disguise of the ordinary civil courts and officers of the occupied district or region, because the so-called civil authorities in an occupied district or region only act at the pleasure of a military authority. It should also be noted here that the several state legislatures, county boards of commissioners, city councils, are constantly legislating to please the edicts of the federal government, the occupying force, and in this case it's a national government, right? And that their legislation in this sense is not an exercise of state sovereignty, but instead a compliance with the edicts of the military force which occupies the several states, and consequently are edicts of martial law rule. And that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett in the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. Statute equals edict under martial law. Regulation equals edict under martial law. Code equals edict under martial law. Rule equals edict under martial law. Constitution equals edict under martial law. Constitutional amendment equals edict under martial law. Everything after 1861 is edicts under martial law.
So they converted the Constitution from whatever it was into
Edicts under martial law.
edict. So the Constitution became an edict.
Right. I mean, everything. They basically, anything that's there is there because they want it there, and anything they don't want there, they've made into edicts under martial law, taking it out and replacing it somehow. See what I'm saying? That's why the 13th Amendment. They edict under martial law.
They rewrote it and renamed it,
Right.
and made the other disappear in the de facto state.
Right.
Well, don't forget that the Constitution of the United States of America is for the United States anyway. The Articles of Confederation are what apply in the United States of America.
Right, but my point is I'm coming forward to 1863 or 1861, whenever the martial law came into effect. So that any constitution that anyone refers to post 1861 is an edict.
Right.
It's no longer what we're taught that the original one was.
Right. Exactly. It's all edicts under martial law. All wanton violence committed against persons in the invaded country, all destruction of property not commanded by the authorized officer, all robbery, all pillage or sacking, even after taking place by main force, all rape, wounding, maiming, or killing of such inhabitants, are prohibited under the penalty of death, or such other severe punishment as may seem adequate for the gravity of the offense. A soldier, officer, or private in the act of committing such violence and disobeying a superior ordering him to abstain from it may be lawfully killed on the spot. Article 44 of the Lieber Code.
Doesn't stop the citizens being killed by the police, though.
No, it doesn't. Got that right. But they want to maintain the illusion. They want you to think that you have a constitution, you got law and order. You know, they don't want people thinking that there's a military dictatorship out there. You know, really, if you think about it.
I'm thinking.
So that's where this good faith came from, right? A soldier, officer, or private in the act of committing such violence and disobeying a superior, ordering him to abstain from it, may be lawfully killed on the spot. So they can do it until they get told not to do it.
Right.
No evidence obtained by an officer or other person in violation of any provisions of the constitutional laws of the state of Texas or the Constitution or laws of the United States of America shall be admitted in evidence against the accused on the trial of any criminal case. Gee, that sounds so good. But then we read paragraph B. It is an exception to the provisions of subsection A of this article that the evidence was obtained by a law enforcement officer acting in objective good faith reliance upon a warrant issued by a neutral magistrate based on probable cause. That's good faith, right? That comes from this Lieber Code Article 44.
But how many times do they have a warrant issued by a magistrate?
Well, and that's the thing, is that's why they call it a warrant, even though it's not. You see what I'm saying? So then they can claim good faith.
But the warrant can only be issued after
a trial. That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you just have to know that.
Yeah.
And then you can
Yeah.
defeat that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why they are taking so long to build a case against Clinton and Comey and all those guys, because they're claiming good faith. I guarantee it. Defense: a good faith reliance on a court warrant or order, a grand jury subpoena, a legislative authorization. What the heck is a legislative authorization? It could be anything. Or a statutory authorization, including a request of a governmental entity under Section 2703F of this title, a request of an investigative or law enforcement officer under Section 2518.7 of this title, or a good faith determination that Section 2511.3 of this title permitted the conduct complained of, is a complete defense to any civil or criminal action brought under this chapter or any other law. That's 18 U.S.C. 2707. So that's why they're taking so long building the case against, because they want to make sure they defeat that good faith argument.
And that's why your notice and demand is critical.
Absolutely.
Critical.
Yeah.
To the parties that's about to assault us with their edicts and guns.
Right.
So
Got to be in writing in a way you can prove. That's why I use registered mail.
until it's basically a way of putting it on the record. Mm-hmm. Everything has to be put on the record, including your vaccine situation. Mm-hmm. Just put it on the record. Let them deal with it. Yep. They step over it, and at that point, they're the ones who are in criminality, not you. Because they're saying you're in criminality by disobeying the edict. So when you notice them, his notice and demand is critical. Mm-hmm. And all we have to do is focus it on the parties that we know are going to bother us. Whoever they are.
Right.
That's all you have to do, and just got to get over that hump and get the wheels moving. It's hard to get going, but once you get going, it gets easier. That's my experience.
You serve them with enough of them, they'll have you in the system. Leave this guy alone.
Yeah.
So it should. Last we talked about it going to the school board, all the way up. I think we said to.
We were talking about it earlier. Maybe you weren't here. We were talking about it There was a, Carl was talking about it. I don't think you were here.
Okay.
When he comes back. There's under the UN Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they have to provide free school, free education. Under the Universal, and the United States has agreed to that. So that doesn't mean with shots, okay? They have to provide free education regardless.
If it means bringing in a private teacher.
Yeah, tell them to bring you a private teacher over to your house.
You
so
would
they can
agree,
teach
you
your
would
kids.
accept that.
Yeah, you'll accept that. Yeah, tell them that.
I love it. This is
Because they have to provide it under the UN agreements. Carl mentioned it.
Yeah. Isn't that partaking in a benefit, though?
Not really. It's a
Human
right.
rights.
It's
No,
a
they're
right
out-
under
they're
universal.
obligated.
They've signed on and agreed to these.
Okay,
These
so
things-
again, it's what they've agreed to, not what I've agreed
That's
to.
right. That's
What
right.
they've agreed to.
So,
So-
you're
I
recontracting,
gotta keep
saying you're recontracting.
So you're entitled to it.
It's not a
you're
benefit.
entitled
It's
to
not a benefit. It's an entitlement.
No.
Well, it's
Right.
more.
Well, meaning
Entitlement.
you're entitled to it.
It's under the
Therefore, it's-
United Nations agreements. They've agreed to provide education for your kids, for your sons and daughters. And so, if they're not going to educate them in the public school, they've agreed to it. That's what I would put down. I'd say, under the UN, a Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you've agreed to provide education for my sons and daughters to everybody. And so, if you're not going to provide it at school, I want you to send a teacher home. I bet you they'll change their tune real fast.
I wouldn't equate entitlement with right.
I wouldn't use it.
A right is
I would
higher
use
than.
I would say it's there, they've agreed to it. When Carl gets back.
And sit and wait for them to answer.
Yeah.
And then put in their damages, if it's not on a daily basis, what the damages are.
Well, actually, you can homeschool your kids. You can cover the same amount of material
Probably 2 hours a day.
in like about 2 hours that they
Yes.
cover all day long. And so they would only have to send a teacher over to his place, you know.
It's private
As
tutor.
long as his kids get the education, that's all that matters.
Right.
They come once a week if they can cover all the material, and that one day a week, then the kids get to go around and do whatever they want. And then they can't complain about truancy either. Anyways, I bet you they'll change their tune. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forms, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the military script, the Federal Reserve notes, the fake money, the PayPal gifts, the checks and money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. All statutes, codes, rules, regulations, and constitutions and constitutional amendments are edicts under martial law. Everything done after 1861 is an edict under martial law. Military necessity equals martial law. All Civil War states are under military occupation. That means Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Kentucky. All states in the territory conquered with the war with Mexico are under a military occupation. That means Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, and parts of California. Dictation equals dictatorship is military dictatorship. Law enforcement officers are enforcing the martial law. That's why they call them law enforcement officers. They are enforcing the martial law. They can wear two hats. They can be a peace officer or a law enforcement officer. When they're a peace officer, they're keeping the peace. When they're a law enforcement officer, they're enforcing the martial law.
Did Texas walk out of Congress? I didn't realize that. They were one of the southern states.
Texas was part of the southern states.
Is that right?
When the Southern states walked out of Congress in 1861, they ceased to have a quorum. Under executive authority, Lincoln ordered Congress to reconvene. When the Supreme Court ruled against Lincoln, something Lincoln did, he ordered troops to the Supreme Court. All process in this court issues in the name of the President of the United States. That's Rule 45 in the current rules of the Supreme Court.
Wow.
You didn't know that?
I didn't realize that was still. So, yeah, I mean, so Trump can sit there and say martial law, even though we're already under martial law.
Well, he's trying to do it right.
Well, they have.
He's trying to get rid of it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's what my book is about.
Well, executive orders are.
But he could do that, or he could do the.
Executive orders are martial law, for
Yeah,
sure.
they just come right from the president.
Yeah.
That shows, you know.
That's right. Sorry?
That's why he's had to gather his military good guys,
Right,
not including the Navy.
right.
It's basically Army and Marines.
Well, mostly the Marines. The Marines are supposed to be the president's personal bodyguards.
Well, the
But the
are in
Marines
Navy.
are part of the Navy.
They're in the Department of the Navy.
That's right.
The Army has.
So the
K9
Navy's
dogs.
really his best friend. That's the Navy. See, we're not supposed to have a standing army, so there shouldn't be any army. The Navy is really the only legitimate, and maybe the Space Force.
Did you guys get that email I sent to you last night about Marines deployed in Washington, D.C.?
No.
I think I did.
Yeah, Dave Hodges or something.
Oh, that. Oh, I listened to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listened to that. Yep.
So he deployed, Marines deployed into.
He is. The Marines
deployed
are.
into Washington, D.C.
The
over
Marines
the
are his
weekend.
personal bodyguards. And
You must
it's
get
it's
antsy.
interesting to note.
Or something, maybe.
Well, they
Correct.
said there was blue helmets there too. So
It's interesting to note that under Obama, they had to order the Marines to presidential duty, and under Trump, there's a waiting list. Anyways, all statutes, state or federal, passed prior to 1861 are lawful de jure statutes. All statutes, state or federal, passed after 1861 are edicts under martial law. Two national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument, and that's Downs versus Bidwell, U.S. Supreme Court, 1901. So then, if the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument, that means it's unconstitutional. In 1871, Congress set up a corporation to operate as the government of the District of Columbia. There's two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword, the other is by debt. It's an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March 9, 1933, 48 Stat 1, Public Law 89-719, declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent, HJR 192, 73rd Congress in session, June 5, 1933, joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolve the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. And that's United States Congressional Record, March 17, 1993, volume 33. Since March 9, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. A majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule. For 40 years, freedoms and governmental procedures guaranteed by the Constitution have in varying degrees been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. And that's taken from U.S. Senate Report number 93-549, dated November 19, 1973. Pentagon Inc., Google, YouTube, Facebook, Amazon, masquerading as private companies. This court declared in the slaughterhouse cases that the 14th Amendment, as well as the 13th and 15th, were adopted to protect the Negroes in their freedom. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment were designed mainly for the protection of the newly emancipated Negroes. After the adoption of the 14th Amendment, a bill which became the first Civil Rights Act was introduced in the 39th Congress, the major purpose of which was to secure to the recently freed blacks all of the civil rights secured to white men, none other than citizens of the United States, were within the provisions of the Act. That's U.S. Supreme Court. The dissenting opinion asserts that the 14th Amendment was a part of the Constitution of the United States. While this same assertion has been made by the United States Supreme Court, that court has never held that the amendment was legally adopted. I cannot believe that any court in full possession of its faculties could honestly hold that the amendment was properly approved and adopted. And that's State versus Phillips. I think that's a Utah case. Everything done after 1861 was done under martial law. All statutes, constitution, codes, rules, regulations, amendments are unconstitutional are for the unconstitutional corporation that was set up in 1871. And this we already read. Martial law falls under the law of nations. This will work for any country on the planet because it falls under the law of nations. Find any national emergency, including a bankruptcy, and you'll have proof your country is operating under martial law. Martial law extends to property and to persons, whether they're subjects of the enemy or aliens to that government. That's Article 7 of the Libra Code. Subjects are aliens, nobody else. Does not affect we the people. Why would anyone want to be a low-life scumbag U.S. citizen? If the military police officer is talking to you, then you are a subject, you are the enemy. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state exists are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may also be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or permission. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, McCullough versus Maryland, 1819. This is Article 4, Section 2, Section 3, Clause 2. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the other property belonging to the United States. If you are a subject, then you get the rules. Your property. You're a slave. This is the Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. Definitions. Section 2. In this act, owned means subject to the regulations. If you are owned, you are subject to the regulations.
Well, better said, if you're subject to the regulations, you're owned.
That's right, yeah. If you're subject to the regulations, you're owned.
Either
That's
way
right.
it will work.
Both way, yeah, that's right. So there's two jurisdictions. It talks about it in the Bible. There's living things, people, animal, plants, heaven, earth, universe, lawful, natural. That's all God's jurisdiction. There's the illusion. The matrix. Fictional things, persons, corporations, domicile, residence, legal, political. That's satanic. The term resident and citizen in the United States is distinguished from a citizen of one of the several states, and that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. If Congress created it, then they can regulate it. The term citizen in the United States is analogous to the term subject in the common law. Civil rights under the 14th Amendment are for federal citizens, not state citizens. Federal citizens, as parents, have no right to the custody of their infant children, except subject to the paramount right of the state. It is evident that they, U.S. citizens, have not the political rights which are vested in citizens of the states. They are not constituents of any community in which is vested any sovereign power of government. Their position partakes more of the character of subjects than of citizens. They are subject to the laws of the United States but have no voice in its management. If they are allowed to make laws, the validity of these laws is derived from the sanction of a government in which they are not represented. Mere citizenship they may have, but political rights as citizens they cannot enjoy. Martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes, whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader, and refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. Now you know why they always want you to be safe. Do you feel like you have no constitutional rights when it comes to income tax? It's because you don't. The Constitutional does not apply where two parties have a contractual relationship. All police are military police, FBI military police, city military police, state military police. That's why they're privateers. That's why it's all in international law. Homeland Security Police, county military police, all police are military police, and if they're talking to you, then you're a subject and you are the enemy. The real domestic terrorists, right there. Murdered by police. You are the enemy. We talked it over, and after investigating it ourselves, we decide that we're not guilty. Beware violent street gangs, the typical gang member. Gang colors, heavily armed, well organized. Gang identifier, do not approach. Gang members are aggressive and notoriously violent. The tyrant, who in order to hold his power suppresses every superiority, does away with good men, forbids education and light, controls every movement of the citizens and keeping them under a perpetual servitude, wants them to grow accustomed to baseness and cowardice, has his spies everywhere to listen to what is said in meetings, and spreads dissension and calumny among the citizens and impoverishes them. It is obliged to make war in order to keep a subject occupied and impose upon them a permanent need of a chief. And that's Aristotle. So calumny, do you know what calumny is? That's disinformation, lies, propaganda. Gee, that sounds like what's on the major networks. Government officials wear two hats. They can represent the unconstitutional corporation or they can represent the lawful de jure government. Because of our own ignorance, and the root word of ignorance is ignore, so it should be ignorance, we have given them evidence of their slave. They presume we're their slave until we defeat their presumption. Under the international law of warfare, all parties to a cause must appear by nom de guerre because an alien enemy cannot maintain an action during a war in his own name. Why do you think they're spelling your name in all block capital letters in these court cases? It's because you're an alien enemy. A mixed war is one which is made on one side by public authority and the other by mere private persons. The United States acknowledge and protect in hostile countries occupied by them religion, morality, strict private property, the persons of the inhabitants, especially those of women, and the sacredness of domestic relations. Offenses to the contrary shall be rigorously punished. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property, to levy forced loans. Forced loans, that's what you got in your wallet. Article 37 of the Lieber Code. Juilliard versus Greenman, U.S. Supreme Court. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They form a part of the public debt of the United States. Federal Reserve notes is military scrip. Federal Reserve notes is forced loans. They're forcing the enemy, you, to loan the government money. Governments or any sovereign descend to the level of a mere private corporation and take on the characteristics of a mere private citizen, where private, corporate, commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes, and securities, checks, is concerned. For purposes of this suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. Federal Reserve notes is military script. All statutes are martial law statutes. All statutes apply to subjects only. The military police often say, you think our laws don't apply to you. The Lieber Code says it all. Do they even teach you to read? That's what I would like to say to some of these, Gestapo. The last thing they want to talk about is war crimes. War crimes precipitate revolutions. That's why they don't want war crimes. I have exclusive content available on my website and also on Patreon. I have 2 subscription levels and I accept cryptocurrencies. The basic subscription level is $29.99 a year for the videos only, $49.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations. But I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, I meant a liar. But I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. The only power that these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit. But I cannot fight all the battles. I need other people being on point and fighting the battles too. I'm currently publishing one video a month, and if you want to make a donation just as I should say get a subscription just as a donation, it's a modest donation, there's no doubt about it, but everything's appreciated a little bit by a whole bunch of people, adds up. So some of my content is Arlington Private Information Share. That's 9 videos by itself. I got land deed training, estoppel certificates training, foreclosure estoppel certificates training, corporate denial training, toll roads notice and demand training, invoice training, notice of void judgment training, revocation of signature training, third-party witness training, federal habeas corpus training, revocation of voter registration, criminal complaint training, and there's actually 3 of those, and there's going to be more in lawsuit training. There's one of those that's going to be up soon, and there's going to be more of those. Other training requests as requested if it's something that I can do. Also, the Northeast Private Information Share videos are all up there. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free on my 2 private groups at Yahoo Groups and Google Groups. And all exclusive content will be on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. All empires are built the same way. You get 50% of the poor to go to war with and kill the other 50% of the poor, leaving the rich to chit-chat in the Senate, which gives the impression that there's real democracy. You absorb the land and riches of your enemies and repeat whenever you need cash or new resources. War is terrorism on a bigger budget. Democracy. Fake laws, false arrest, feel free. No contract, agreement, or regulation shall impair the right of any worker, whether voluntary or not, wherever he may be, to apply to the representatives of the protecting power in order to request the said powers and intervention. And so, court rules, court filing fees, that's all a violation of Article 52. The Geneva Convention, relative to the protection of civilians in the time of war of 1949. All measures aimed at creating unemployment and are restricting the opportunities offered to workers in an occupied territory in order to induce them to work for the occupying power are prohibited. While when they go and compel the disclosure of a Social Security number, they force you to work for the government, then that's a violation of Article 52 of the Geneva Convention as well. Edicts under martial law. This is Title 5 United States Code, Section 552 AA 13. The term federal personnel means individuals entitled to receive immediate or deferred retirement benefits under any retirement program of the government of the United States, including survivor benefits, which means that anybody with a Social Security number is federal personnel. And so they're compelling the Social Security number to get a job. They're in violation of Article 52 of the Geneva Convention. Anybody with a Social Security number is federal personnel. If they compel the disclosure of a Social Security number, they're compelling you to work for the occupying power. Filing fees are a regulation. Court rules are a regulation. Those are all violations of Article 52 of the Geneva Convention. Coercing information from you or a third party is a war crime. The pigs do that stuff all the time. When they coerce the date of birth from you, they're compelling you to work for the occupying power. When they use their regulations to deny you justice, it's a war crime. That's the bought and paid for whores in the so-called courts. Protected persons in all circumstances are entitled to respect to their persons, their honor, their family rights, their religious convictions, and practices and their manners and customs, without prejudice to the provisions relating to their state of health, age, and sex. All protected persons shall be treated with the same consideration by the party to the conflict whose power they are, without any adverse distinction based in particular on race, religion, or political opinion. And so when they call you a sovereign citizen, that's a political opinion. Okay, so they're taking reprisals against you for a political opinion. When they stop you because you have plates on your vehicle that are not state plates, they're persecuting you for your political opinion. When they drag you into their kangaroo court, they're subjecting you to their satanic religious ceremony. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity, for when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use and the receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal fief, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, that's the Roman cult, folks, to be bound in conscience to account to assessing a use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. Well, gee, that's taxes. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. So, and that's taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of marque. My contact information, my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page is deleted due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group at Facebook called Sovereignty International is being deleted, although I haven't been on Facebook in months. So it's a has-been. I don't even go there anymore. My Yahoo private group is called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. My Google private group is called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Twitter at Engineer Win. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. And my BitChute channel is called Sovereignty International. I also have a Patreon channel called Sovereignty International. And I've also got a Brighteon channel with Mike Adams called Sovereignty International. Article 8, Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in this time of war of 1949. Protected persons may in no circumstances renounce in part or entirety the rights secured to them by the present convention. So you cannot give up these rights that are in these international agreements. The party to the conflict in whose hands protected persons may be as responsible for the treatment accorded to them by its agents, irrespective of any individual responsibility which may be incurred. So they might be able to get their low intelligence pig off the hook, but they're still responsible. Terrorism is a system of government that seeks to rule by intimidation. Can you spot the terrorists? Look at them all. Noun, terrorism is a noun, use of violence and intimidation in the pursuit of political aims. Americans killed in 2015 by cannabis 0, Ebola 1, snake bites 2, ISIS 3, playing football 12, cow attack 20. Holy cow, or cow attack. Bee sting 100, police 1,100, and big pharma 100,000. Why is that a surprise? Small penis, lack confidence, bullied at school. Why not join the police? You'll get to use phrases such as, I am the law, respect my authority, tell it to the judge. Knowledge of the law is not needed. Matter of fact, it's actively discouraged. Training includes practical steps on how to manufacture consent to statutory rules, intimidation techniques, and legalese speak. Below average intelligence and absolute obedience to authority is mandatory. So, you got to build a case. You get the police report, you get copies of any videos, you get any notes. It's amazing what kind of evidence they'll give you against them. All the statutory citations are provided from Catman's material. Catman has done a huge amount of research, and I highly recommend that everybody in Texas should have his book. This is a police report, a request for records from Colleyville Police Department that I did. And it's, again, you got to specify everything because they're a bunch of idiots, and so if you don't ask for it, you won't get it. And so this actually stuff cost me nothing when I finally got it. Although I had to there was a video. I had to pay $5 for a DVD, which is definitely a reasonable. But I asked for all reports, all videos, all offense reports, all incident reports, all narratives, all call logs, all arrest reports, all photos, all bonds, all oaths of office, and of all officers involved, and all criminal complaints. And so, anyways, yeah, I got a bunch of stuff. All reports, all videos, yeah, all offense reports, all incident reports, all narratives, all call logs, arrest reports, photos, criminal complaints, bonds, and oaths of office for all officers involved. And I got a bunch of stuff. Check out my other videos: Bankster Thieves Playlist, Roman Cult Playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 4, Do-It-Yourself, How Not to Volunteer for the Selective Service in the Draft, Martial Laws Here, Do-It-Yourself No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself Free Mail, Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts 1 through 15, Canada Border Pigs Playlist, Bar Members and their Satanic Connections Playlist. Anyways, under Article 71 of the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilians in the time of war 1949, no sentence shall be pronounced except by competent courts of the occupying power, except by after a regular trial. That means you have to have received due process, and they never give you due process. It is a fundamental right of a party to have a neutral and detached judge preside over judicial proceedings. They're always demonstrating that they're bought and paid for whores. Warning, this is the standing army you're told not to tolerate. Order followers, the servants of evil, you assist an evil system most effectively by obeying its orders and decrees. An evil system never deserves such allegiance. Allegiance to it means partaking of the evil. A good person will resist an evil system with his or her whole soul. Well said, Mahatma Gandhi. Order followers are the ones keeping the system of slavery in place. Well said, Mark Passio. War is when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution is when you figure it out for yourself. When liberty and freedom are at stake, your silence isn't golden, it's yellow. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. These Roman cult Satanists are bending over backwards to make you think you have constitutional rights. It's extremely important to them that people do not figure this out, because the last time they were doing war crimes, it precipitated a revolution. If you challenge jurisdiction, the so-called judge is required to compel the prosecutor to prove jurisdiction or dismiss the case. If they do anything, it's a denial of due process, a war crime. They're cowards. They're real brave when there's 20 or 30 of them, but when it's just you and them, they're cowards. They sneak around, fabricate evidence that you're the enemy and a subject, their slave, and they will never confront you man to man without lots of their buddies to back them up. You're the enemy, and the sooner you figure that out, the better. You're a subject and they're slave, and the sooner you figure that out, the better. Give me liberty or give me death is a quote by, it was not Samuel Adams, it was Patrick Henry, after witnessing a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. They're assaulting people with their Roman cult Sestake Trust. And this is a couple Supreme Court cases from like 1789. And so it was fresh in their memory. In doing this, I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how true it is that his creatures and servants have first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. A state like a merchant makes a contract, a dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. And that's Chisholm versus Georgia, 1794 or something like that, around then. George Washington said, government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. The communists in the Southern Poverty Law Center are responsible. They're persecuting you for your political beliefs. They're taking reprisals against you because you don't want to be their slave. They're pillaging your property. They're not respecting your religious beliefs. They're terrorizing you. They're threatening you. They're coercing information from you and from third parties. They're engaging in genocide against state citizens. Remember, it's warfare. You have to treat it like it's warfare because that is exactly what it is. Don't wait for them to attack you. Attack them first. The number one rule of warfare is the best defense is a good offense. Attack them. make an affidavit of corporate denial, serve them with a notice and demand that's designed to take away their presumptions. And if you do this effectively, it will put them in a very difficult position. If you do it well, you may even be able to get them fired or worse. Make an affidavit of criminal complaint and serve it on the U.S. attorney and everybody and their brother. And this is an arrest report for me, basically, that I got from the Colleyville pigs. And there's a couple, what are their offenses? These are actually Class C misdemeanors. This ain't over, I guarantee you. I'm getting ready to file a lawsuit against these pigs. Anyways, if the owner of a motor vehicle fails to timely pay the amount of the civil penalty imposed against the owner, an arrest warrant may not be issued. It was a speeding ticket. So that's a Class C misdemeanor. And so they still issued an arrest warrant. So I'm going to go after them. I've already filed judicial complaints. It ain't over. Bail jumping and failure to appear. An offense under this section is a Class C misdemeanor if the offense for which the actor's appearance is required is punishable by fine, which means they can only punish you by fine for failure to appear or bail jumping too. Classification of misdemeanor. Conviction of a Class C misdemeanor does not impose any legal disability or disadvantage. An individual judged guilty of a Class C misdemeanor shall be punished by fine only. And so, again, it's a Class C misdemeanor. And there's more. There's the narrative from the Colleyville pigs. That's more of the narrative. See, they're looking for money. The pigs want money. And a county attorney will represent the state in all cases. I actually showed up to their kangaroo court and I asked the prosecutor who he worked for. And he said he works for the city of Colleyville. And so that's when I told him that he's impersonating a public servant. He's supposed to be a county attorney. And he didn't want to talk about that at all, I guarantee you. Anyways, and an offense of this section is a Class C misdemeanor if the offense for which the actor's appearance is required is punishable by fine only. And so I'm not done with these pigs. Crime means a misdemeanor punishable by jail or a felony. So a Class C misdemeanor is not a crime. And a defendant means a person accused of a crime. So they're assaulting me with their defendant, which means they prejudged it. They'd already decided what it was. And a municipal court, including a municipal court of record, shall have exclusive original jurisdiction within the territorial limits of the municipality in all criminal cases. Well, a Class C misdemeanor is not a crime. So those pigs don't have jurisdiction. A defendant is a crime. Has to be a crime if it's a defendant. A municipal court, including a municipal court of record, shall have exclusive original jurisdiction within the municipality territorial limits in all criminal cases. Well, it's a Class C misdemeanor, so it's not a crime. That arise under the ordinances of the municipality, the municipal court has concurrent jurisdiction with the justice court of a precinct in which the municipality is located in all criminal cases. Well, it's not a crime. In this section, an offense which is punishable by fine only is defined an offense that's punishable by fine and such sanctions, if any, as authorized by statute, not consisting of confinement in jail or imprisonment. And so, again, that stuff is not a crime. A county attorney is supposed to represent the state in all cases, and they deliberately, the city prosecutor is perjuring his oath, he's impersonating a public official, and the judge is in on it, so it's a conspiracy. All statutes, all codes, all regulations, all constitutions, all constitutional amendments, all rules, all court rules, all fees are all edicts under martial law. And that's the end. I was getting myself going. So again, these guys are privateers. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves. You see what I'm saying? They're pirates. That's what they are. And the sooner we figure that out and start bringing up that issue, that's the issue that we need to bring up. Privateering is supposed to be eliminated under international law. They're operating under international law. They're operating under the high seas of commerce, and they're privateers. They've got no business doing any of this stuff. Anyways, I think I'll turn off my recording. But, so that's it.
Ooh.